the Caribbean island of Haiti, a journey into mystery. Voodoo, medicine men, and zombies. People risen from the grave. Haitian villagers swear that this man and this woman are zombies. Scientific evidence indicates it might be so. Geraldo Rivera adventures to Haiti, hears testimony, talks with people who claim to be living with the living dead.
The drums. Hot day or tropical night, you can hear them echoing off the sides of mountains and down river valleys and through sun-beaten villages that seem carved out of the ancient heart of Africa. But this is not Africa. This is the most mysterious and, in terms of culture, the most isolated country in the New World. This is Haiti. It's a nation created when entire African villages were captured and brought here as slaves. Ultimately, the slaves would throw off their oppressors. But the drums tell you, the cultural soul of the nation they created is still Africa. And Voodoo, their ancient folk religion, is still practiced by 90% of the Haitian people. This ceremony, for example, is part of a festival honoring Gede, Voodoo god of the dead.
In a Haitian graveyard, it's almost midnight, and the beginning of All Saints' Day, Halloween. Behind me, a voodoo priest is leading his flock in a ceremony welcoming the dead. I know it may seem eerie, but it's a religious rite. In a world rich in mystery, voodoo stands out among the most exotic. And here in Haiti, voodoo is a folk religion, and it teaches the lesson of the living dead.
The worshippers come to the cemetery with offerings of food and begin dances upon the graves. They're here to invite the dead to join them in celebration. To a reporter no stranger to mystery, I found the intensity of this ritual amazing. As the drums quicken and the music builds, the dancers are gripped by frenzy and throw themselves among the crypts and crosses of the cemetery. They've been possessed, inhabited by the spirits of the dead. I know this must strike you as bizarre, but in the Haitian countryside, death, like life, is considered a temporary condition. The deceased can be brought back to life. There's even a word to describe a person who makes the trip back from the dead. They call them zombies, and their legends lured us to Haiti, because we heard zombies, the living dead, really exist. This, for instance, is Clervius Narcisse, a local villager performing one of the seasonal rituals, cleaning off a tombstone. The catch is the tombstone Mr. Narcisse is cleaning is his own. You see, he died 23 years ago, and he was buried in the presence of dozens of witnesses. His decline and fall are even on record.
When Narcisse was very ill, he was brought here to the world-famous Albert Schweitzer Hospital. It's a modern charitable facility run largely by Americans. As his condition got progressively worse, his doctors watched Narcisse fade away. It's in writing. Here are the documents. On the 2nd of May, 1962, Clervius Narcisse was declared dead by his attending physician. Of course, people write death certificates, and human error afflicts even the obituary page, but apparently not this time. Narcisse's entire village, including his sister and aunt, saw him buried. How many of them saw Narcisse being buried? Everyone saw him buried, they told me. Then, just about 17 years after his funeral, Narcisse was spotted by a niece as he wandered around one of these rural market towns. He was taken home with a story that, as you hear it, becomes increasingly more difficult to believe. But I believe it.
He didn't feel that he was going to live. He felt he was going to die.
As translated by Elsa Armand, a Haitian lawyer, Narcisse told me how, in 1962, he had become ill and died. How did he know he was dead?
Est-ce que tu penses que tu moun mouri pendant t'a venir?
Oui,
He says he heard everybody crying, but he couldn't speak, but he could see, he could hear. But so he knew he was dead because everybody was crying around him.
So Narcisse claims first that he died, and secondly that he was conscious but paralyzed during his burial, and therefore unable to protest the horror of being buried alive. And he is not the only zombie I met. Her nickname is Tifon, Little Woman. And about 9 years ago, she was dead and buried. Well, 3 years later, she was found physically starved and emotionally disturbed. Dr. Lamarck Dion, Haiti's most prominent psychiatrist, has researched her case for 3 years, and he is convinced of its validity.
I've been to the village where she was reported dead. I met her own mother, her last husband. I met a lot of people, about 200 people, who were either her neighbors or her relatives or friends. And all of them, all those people were convinced it was really Tifon who was reported dead 3 years before and who was buried.
She was buried?
Yes, buried. And I have even been to the place where she was buried. I saw the grave.
So there is clear and, to me, reasonably convincing evidence from the available records, from the testimony of experts, and from eyewitness accounts that an unknown number of Haitians have apparently died, been buried, and later have been seen alive. These masked men are the common link between the cases studied. They are voodoo medicine men, and they claim the ability to make people into zombies.
This is a beautiful, in some ways even frightening place that seems filled with mystery. And without a doubt, all this exotic atmosphere adds to the believability of the powers of the voodoo medicine men. But black magic aside, there is also something undeniably real about the power of these zombie makers. And it has nothing at all to do with hocus pocus.
What happened to those people?
They were poisoned.
Wade Davis is a kind of real-life Indiana Jones, a Harvard anthropologist who specializes in tracking down biomedical explanations for what might seem primitive rituals or black magic. After several trips deep into the Haitian countryside, Davis is writing a book about the reality behind the legend of the zombies.
What is necessary to make a zombie who by folk belief is living dead is you must be able to bury someone and bring them back to life. What we believe is that people are not buried dead unless you believe in magic. We believe they're actually given a drug which lowers their metabolism and brings on a semblance of death.
So this poison puts them into a death-like state? It makes them appear dead?
The poison brings on a state of apparent death in which they are then buried. The person apparently comes to in the ground and is then taken out of the ground in the midst of a ritualistic ceremony.
So what is this poison, this witch's brew that can reduce people to apparent death? Wade Davis found out from a jack-of-all-trades named Marcel Pierre. Marcel runs a combination restaurant and brothel in a tiny Haitian town. His principal occupation, though, is Beaucourt, or sorcerer, who, for a price, will manufacture the zombie powder to order. With an introduction from anthropologist Davis, and for a payment, Marcel agreed to brew us a batch. As you'll see, the process turned out to be a bizarre tropical adventure, one I won't soon forget. But it started calmly enough with an early morning trip to the beach on the Bay of San Marc. Marcel was after one of his main ingredients, a puffer fish. For centuries, the ancient people of Africa and Asia have known it to contain a poison called tetrodotoxin. Davis told us just how potent that poison really is.
As an anesthetic, it's 160,000 times more potent than cocaine. As a poison, it's 500 times more potent than cyanide. To give you an idea of a lethal dose of the pure drug would be about the amount that would sit on the head of a pin.
This is it. This is the puffer fish from which the poison, the toxin, is extracted and becomes one of the components in the substance that evidently allows people to be put into the zombie state.
Oui, dis-moi.
The next stop was at the zombie maker's primitive laboratory, which to me seems stolen from the soul of a child's nightmare.
So here, these are the various ingredients used. So you have snake, and the
this is again the fufu,
puffer fish,
of lizard.
snakes and snails and puppy dog tails, and another kind of little fish. And you use bones also? You use human bones?
Oui. I never said this trip was going to be fun. I watched in disgusted amazement as the Beaucourt dug up a coffin containing the remains of a child. He had recently stolen the body from a nearby graveyard. When all the ingredients had been assembled, Marcel and a group of his assistants led us on a scorching march high into the Haitian hills. Since the potion is so poisonous, to prevent accidents, it's mixed only in an open, isolated location.
So these are the adult bones.
That, yes. He says some of the bones are not dry enough, so he's going to put them just without anything in the pot.
Once a fire was started, the zombie makers went to work. Each of the Beaucourt's assistants assigned a separate task so that none could learn Marcel's secret formula.
Two things strike me. Number one, there's no ritual here. These people are almost chemists. They're peasant chemists is what they are. And they're making a very lethal potion there, and they respect it a great deal. The powder is evidently so toxic that even if it gets on your skin, without an open wound or anything, it can cause you great damage.
Back in the United States, we had samples of the powder analyzed, and more zombie mysteries were unraveled. For example, remember Narcisse telling us he remained conscious during his apparent death and burial? Well, case studies indicate that that's one of the symptoms of this poison from the pufferfish, this tetrodotoxin. As the body is slowed down and paralyzed, consciousness is one of the last things to go.
So when Narcisse tells you that he heard himself pronounced dead, when he tells you that he saw the sheet taken over his face, that he heard his sister beginning to weep, facts that seem absolutely unbelievable at first, until you know the chemical or the pharmacological, the action of that drug in the body. And then it's not incredible at all.
But how do these people survive in the coffin?
There are many answers for that. First of all, when the body's metabolism is lowered to that state, oxygen needs are reduced dramatically.
After centuries of practice, the voodoo medicine men have learned just how many hours one of their victims can remain buried before all the oxygen in the coffin is used up. But sometimes, as in the case of Tifam, someone makes a mistake. Apparently left buried for too long, she appears brain damaged.
The functions that would be the first to go would be things like your character, your willpower, your personality. And that's, of course, the Haitian definition of a zombie, is a person without willpower, character, or personality.
Remember, the zombie poison is skin active. All you have to do is touch it. And it looks very much like the dirt around here. So what the Beaucourt, the voodoo medicine man, does is prepare his poison and then put it any place he knows his intended victim is going to touch. Because the poison is so powerful, one touch is said to be enough.
But why do it to someone? Well, apparently it's a form of people's justice, meted out by local secret societies for alleged crimes against the community. Narcisse, for example, is said to have wrongfully withheld property from his brother, while Tifam allegedly committed adultery. Once deprived of their free will, zombies, we are told, are sometimes used as slave laborers. It's a harsh and primitive system, but a well-known voodoo priest named Max Beauvoir says it is no worse than any other.
This is what we call the capital punishment. In certain places, it would be the electric chairs. In other places, it would be the guillotine, where they cut off your head. In other places, they put you in before the firing squad. And here we believe it is more humane, because we do not remove the life of the individual.
Whatever your judgment on Haitian folk justice, there is an ironic and even happy sidelight to this story. This is Dr. James Cottrell, Chief of Anesthesia at Downstate Medical Center in New York City. After studying the available data, Dr. Cottrell theorizes that the substance, tetrodotoxin, may someday be very valuable in modern medicine.
The drug does reduce the body's need for oxygen, or the brain's need for oxygen, and that's what anesthesia is all about, is reducing the need for oxygen during critical periods of stress.
In various animal studies, Dr. Cottrell's research team has proven that the drug does indeed cool the brain, therefore reducing its need for oxygen during surgery, since it also temporarily immobilizes the patient and dramatically cuts down the flow of blood to the head. It may be ideally suited for delicate brain operations. And happily, when given under these carefully controlled conditions, the drug is quickly reversible. In proper dosage, these animal tests demonstrate it even wears off on its own, with no side effects.
It's almost as if you need to put the patients into a zombie state, then, to make them living dead.
Well, I guess you might say that. We like to think of it more in terms of physiologic changes, but you could refer to it as a zombie-like state.
That's because you weren't with the voodoo medicine men in Haiti.
Right.
When we first began production on this report, words like voodoo and zombies belong to the same sinister fantasy world as goblins and gremlins. When we learned, though, that voodoo was a religion and that zombies may really exist, we began to think about some of our own legends. There may really have been a Sleeping Beauty, for instance, or a Snow White, and both women may have just seemed dead because they had been poisoned the same way Haitian zombies are poisoned.
More to the point are the possible uses in modern medicine of some of the ingredients in the zombie powder in the tradition of quinine, aspirin, digitalis, morphine, and many other useful medicines. Once again, a so-called primitive people have yielded a potential benefit onto the rest of us.